So, guys, there's a picture of Ray Phoenix online in a straitjacket. And, I do want to say that, I have really mixed feelings about his AEW contract and his whole situation. On one side, I can understand, it is frustrating that he's not being utilized and he's sitting at home for a lot of months, under his AEW contract and getting time added because he was out on injury. And ultimately, the reason why Tony Khan is doing that is because he wants to hurt WWE. And there could be a sense with him being vindictive. But ultimately, when we're in professional wrestling or other companies that, sometimes we are contractually obligated to, do certain things or get time extended. And that's just the nature of the beast, really. That's why you got to be really careful when you sign a contract, or just understand that, you are in an industry, and part of the industry is that you have to get a contract that may not always be in your best benefit. And I actually have a friend who works in the adult film industry, and it was the same thing with her, that, if there is a contract, there may be like one thing that she wants to do, but then they're like, no, you have to do 5 things in that contract because, she's being paid a lot of money, really. So she's like, okay, well, I got to do this thing, that thing that I don't agree with. And that's that, really. So it does feel like in some cases, like you may feel objectified, or you may feel like, a company's not really caring about you, so it is definitely hurtful and dehumanizing in one way. But there's also, the other thing too is that, we're all adults, we decide to join a company and agree to a contract. And that also means that, whatever is not good about that contract, we have to eat crow because we signed it in the first place. So I can understand how Ray Phoenix is feeling, but I also just deeply disagree with the fact that he's just online putting himself in a straitjacket, because overall it hurts AEW, and it's just very, very just vindictive bitch behavior, because, he agreed to that contract, and getting time extended is a consequence he has to deal with. And ultimately, like, AEW is struggling, so all he's doing is just really hurting the company and just being very vindictive. And it's a sign of what Tony needs to do. He needs to take people like that and be like, okay, well, since you're defaming the company, you know what, you're at home, but now you're not getting paid, or there's other hard consequences, because you can't be doing that, but you can't be defaming the company. And I think Tony has to be putting his foot down, really, and being a boss about that. And look, I do understand, as I said, there have been times in my life I've worked for people, or there's things that I disagree with working at a hospital. Like, we're forced to get flu vaccines every single year. We're forced to get COVID shots. We're forced to get booster shots. And the rule is, if you don't do that, you're fired. And sometimes we'll have like managers or executives show up in meetings and saying, I'm sick of young people dying and other things like that. And as you guys know, that whatever you feel about immunization and vaccinations, the reason why hospitals and other jobs, make their employees do that under the threat and termination is because it's not because they care about employees. It's because they make money, because the CDC and other people give them money by getting people vaccinated. And we also understand, too, that there are some vaccines that can cause an allergic reaction in people. There's some vaccines that can kill people. So if you work at a job that forces you to do that, maybe 1 out of every 100,000 employees or whatever will, die or get an allergic reaction. Or there was a post of a woman who needed medical attention. They gave her a flu vaccination and her skin broke out and everything like that. And they didn't really care, because they're like, it was at a different hospital, but they're like, okay, well, you can't get medical treatment sometimes without people forcing vaccines on you. So there are a lot of industries where, people disagree with rules or policies, and they feel like dehumanized and whatever, really, and part of that is, we can agree with that, but part of it's also, we still got to be a professional. I do not believe in forcing people to take vaccinations, and I don't believe that people should be threatened to be fired. Like, I think that that's actually, something that should be illegal, because there are people that don't believe in immunizations, and then there's people like who actually don't do well with needles, and they actually get more sick or they have reactions, really, So, if somebody protested that, I would be understanding. But if somebody was to protest that in a way of saying this is similar to Nazi human experimentations, or if somebody was like saying, wearing shackles, or being like, or showing like pictures of people being victims of medical experiences in Unit 731, other things, people can be like, okay, you're protesting, but you're doing it in a way that's hurting your company, or you're doing it in a way that's kind of like, taking it to another level, really, of bashing, really. So I agree with people protesting and standing up for themselves, or saying, they disagree with something, but there is also a level of, being very immature with that. I think with Ray Fenix putting a straitjacket on is definitely very mature, because, he's really showing himself as a prisoner. He's really showing himself as, maybe somebody who doesn't have control, because, the straitjacket also symbolizes how they treat mentally ill people way back in the day, or the one flew over the cuckoo's nest days of, when they would just medicate people or beat up patients, or just like really just subjugate them to, being restrained in ways that were not humane, really, So I just think that, in my opinion, I think Ray Fenix, yes, he just doesn't care about AEW. If he hurts the company, so be it. That's just his mentality. But it's also bad because we're in a time and a culture where people protest things and they are immature with how they protest. They get a huge like fan support, really, So I just think that, as I said, he agreed to that contract. It is unfair because, it's a lot to ask for somebody to be home for like a year and a half or a little bit longer, and it's not for his best interest. But he also has to understand that, he has to think of the greater good, that, obviously, there's so many wrestlers on the AEW roster, the company is struggling, so all this behavior does nothing but hurt AEW, and it's extremely selfish and very petty and immature, really. And it's also a reflection of Tony Khan's bad leadership, because he needs to create consequences. Because if somebody did that to Vince McMahon and they worked into WWE, they would be fined and other things like that. But also, too, that, just because we get screwed over because we're part of a contract doesn't give us a right to act immature. And there's a difference between, like, speaking out professionally and respecting the company because other people work there or they're struggling. Or, like I said, nobody knew about Ray Fenix until he actually joined AEW and was on national television, not when he's in AAA or other companies. So, there's also a sense of being appreciative. But, you just can't act like a big baby when you don't like your contract. And the last thing is that when I did the 48-hour film project, I've had disagreements with that company. I've experienced, unprofessionalism, double standards, people talking about my race and other things like that. And, there is a sense, where I've taken my disagreements, more publicly or more in an immature or harassing type of way. But I've learned over time that, okay, there's standing up for yourself, there is bringing attention to a problem, and then there is harassment, and then there is defamation, and then there is, okay, other of my friends like to do it, other of my friends have made connections and other things. So if I destroy the company or if I do a lot to hurt the company, I'm hurting a lot of other people who need the company to feed their families and other things like that, So I think it is a controversial situation. I feel for Ray Fenix. I also feel that, it's bad that he's at home for a long time and he's not really wrestling or doing other things. But there are some people in the AEW roster that, like Ricky Starks, where he's in other companies right now. He may bash AEW a little bit to get heel heat or get some shock value heat, but he's keeping himself active, really. But with Ray Fenix, I don't really see anything about him joining other companies and, gaining some practice and whatever, really, So I really think that he comes off like a big baby to me. And I also think that, just the era that we live in is that we deal with a lot of people that encourage our protesting, even when we get immature with that. But ultimately, I just disagree with how he's handling himself. And I think that the whole Stray Jack thing, or AEW just had a great, like, 2 shows, you know, and now he comes out and he does this, is just a way of, you know what, just, okay, AEW is moving forward, but now he's trying to kill their momentum, really. So, you know, that's just not good, and that's selfish, and it's also a sign of how Tony needs to manage people, because, you know, as I said, if this was WWE during the time of Vince McMahon, he would find somebody, because he's like, no, you're part of the company, but I'm not going to let you, you know, defame the company while you're here, and I'm still paying you, even if you're sitting at home, really, you know. So Ray Fenix is part of AEW. He has to think about the greater good of AEW. He has to also understand he did sign a contract, so there are going to be some things that are going to fuck him over. But he needs to be professional, really. And Tony also needs to step up, because, you know, AEW is struggling. AEW has a lot of people who are very passionate about the company despite the problems. The same way people are passionate working for WWE when there are problems in that company as well, really. So, you know, when somebody's being a detriment and being a problem, you know, Tony just has to step in and be like, yo, motherfucker, you know, you're still being paid, be a professional. So there's some things he has to do, but Ray Fenix can really go fuck himself. He's being a big child with all this.